Welcome to Beneficial Conversations. We will explore the world of employee benefits and dive into the trends, challenges, and innovations shaping our industry. Join us as we sit down with industry leaders, HR professionals, policy experts, and thought leaders to discuss strategies for creating impactful benefit programs that support employees and drive organizational success. So whether you're an employee, a consultant, or you're simply curious, Beneficial Conversations looks to provide valuable insights, actionable advice, and inspiring stories to help you navigate the future of work. Welcome to Beneficial Conversations. I am your host, CJ Jordan, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Stephanie Koch, HR Director of Hendry Marine, a legend in the space. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and that was very kind of you to say.
No, I'm very excited to have you on. Your voice is we see it everywhere. You've become such an advocate for just HR in general, for health insurance and health care and what it means. So I'm very excited to have you on to lend your, knowledge and experience and all that kind of stuff. So before we get into your background and stuff, this is my standard question that I ask everybody. I need to hear about the best meal that you've had. And it can be one that you've made at home. It can be one that you've shared as an experience somewhere. I just want to hear about your best meal.
Wow, you caught me off guard with that one. Well, first of
all, I didn't prep you on that one.
No, you didn't. Truth be known, I don't love cooking because I typically
don't have time. It can be at a restaurant. It can be on one of your many ventures at the conferences that you've spoken at and stuff like that. I just want to hear, and it doesn't even have to be the best food. It can be the best experience, ambiance, anything like that.
So what came to mind when you said it could be at a conference? I mean, I've certainly been fortunate to travel to so many different places as I've been speaking, but last year when I was at the Employee Benefit News Conference, it was in San Diego. And we had a dinner outside. It was the most beautiful weather, the most beautiful environment, and just a group of wonderful people. It had to be 25, 30 of us. And just the whole experience and the meal, it was phenomenal. So that was very memorable.
I find that when I ask that question, people rarely ever talk about the food. That it's more of like the experience or like the environment or who you are with or like the location or the celebration or whatever it is. It's so rarely actually about the food. You might remember the restaurant if it was a specific restaurant, but you never ate, but you remember who you were with and stuff like that. So I'm always curious about kind of what that is. I'm a foodie, so I love, all of that. But
me too.
It's just, I'm always curious to hear about people's experiences, but I've been to San Diego several times. I mean, you want to talk about scenery and stuff like that, having good food and good company out there.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Not to say that I haven't had many, many, many wonderful personal experiences as well, but that stood out to me in the last year as a very memorable time.
All right. So I want to hear a little bit about your background, just kind of how you're coming into the space and stuff like that. So take me back a little bit as far as, how you started getting into this and your background and kind of where you are now.
Yeah, so I've actually been working in human resources about 30 years, which means I'm kind of old.
No, just a number.
No, I know. So I started in 96, and I'm not going to go through all of my career, but what's interesting is, as anyone starting in a career, you start getting included in more meetings as you obtain more information and you start contributing when you feel a little more confident. But the first couple of companies I worked for were fully funded. And I thought, okay, well, we have health insurance. But at the time I was green, didn't ask a lot of questions. But when I started getting more involved in the conversations and more immersed in HR, I remember sitting in meetings again with one of the BUCAs and kind of scratching my head, not understanding how they got to these numbers, and then in 2013, moved to a company as the VP of HR where I was going into my first self-funded program with a BUCA plan.
Yeah.
And that was interesting because I was scared because I never understood what self-funding was.
Sure.
But nonetheless wanted to jump in and learn it. And then in 2016 is when we transitioned into the non-traditional healthcare space and jumped right into reference-based pricing. And
Yeah,
then since then, in 2019, I came to Hendry, and then there's been a whole story since I got here. And it's
sure.
been a very rewarding part of my career.
So going back to the 2013 when you started, having those conversations around the self-funding, was that in place prior to when you got there, or
Yeah,
was that okay? So was that driven CFO, president, executive, or like what was the structure of that? Like, I guess you came in when they were already self-funded,
I
but
did.
who was
I
driving
did.
that process?
I'm going to assume it was my predecessor along
Okay.
with some of the leadership.
Hmm.
And fortunately, in this case and in my other cases, HR was included in most of the conversations. So when I started in 2013, I was included in those executive leadership conversations.
Good.
So I was very fortunate, but again, not understanding what self-funding meant because it really was, it felt scary because I didn't know what I was getting into, but in reality, it was really doing the same thing, getting some data more than we were getting before because we never got any.
Right.
Um, and the time came in 2016 where despite doing all the things that we were being recommended, by the carrier and our broker at the time, who I still admire to this day, they're brilliant.
Yeah.
And I will always say that. We got an 18% increase. And that's when the company, it was a family owned company.
Yep.
And, an 18% increase compounded is not sustainable. So that's when some of the leadership teams started looking at other options. And unbeknownst to me, they went to a benefit class or symposium and came back and were talking about reference-based pricing.
Hmm.
And naturally, my first response was, yeah, no, really. And it's
Edit it
funny when
out.
I think back. What?
I said initially it's like the bleep comment, like of
Yeah,
you gotta
yeah,
be
and yeah. Um, essentially, like insert phrase of, no. I said, you guys are crazy. Like, this
right.
is not going to work. It sounds too good to be true. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard about this. Why would we even do this?
Hmm.
And shortly thereafter, probably within a few days, I came to my senses. It's my responsibility, overseeing HR. I needed to at least be open minded and learn about it, but I also needed to be shown what it was going to be. Like in concept, you can tell me, but
Right.
I need to see it. And that's when, the light bulb went on and I was like, oh my God, this is what I'd been missing all these years, that I kind of knew something was off. I just didn't know what.
Right. Yeah, we always hear about like the different carriers tout the discounts and stuff like that, and it's we'll discount off
Right.
of what? Like we've got a great discount. It's like okay, but like a discount off of what? Like, is you're 300% and you're giving me a discount to 280% of Medicare, or what is this discount that you're touting?
Yeah, and that was the whole thing because when I finally decided to be open-minded and said, okay, show me, one of the things we did was we had an EOB for a CT scan. And I said, okay, we'll run it through our BUCA plan, but also run it through reference-based pricing. And I want to see the difference. What are the outcomes? What is it you're talking about? And the price was significantly different. Like I want to
Right.
say it was 3,200 running through the BUCA plan versus 3 or 400. And
That's just for one
immediately, huh?
single. I said, and that's just for one
One.
single like
Yes.
procedure, one single claim that's going to hit the plane. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
wild.
and then all the years that as an HR person, we have to, I always say, like, pick the best of the worst plans because it was like, oh, based on your demographics and based on the manual adjustment or based on whatever, blah, blah, blah information, we can provide you with these couple of plans unless you want to change the plan design, which we did a lot because sometimes you can't absorb the premium, so something's got to give.
Yeah.
And it was usually at the detriment of, the plan designs that were being offered to the employees. And that's not a fun message to send.
Yeah, we're raising a deductible, or we're putting a deductible on pharmacy, or
Mhm.
out-of-pocket max is going up, or something along those lines.
Yeah,
Yeah, all the levers that you have to pull because you don't have any other options.
right. Or at least
Yeah,
I didn't know I did
right.
until almost 10 years ago.
And so you said, even early on in the self-funding, there are concerns. What were your primary concerns initially? Even going back to the 2013, 2016 range, what were the concerns that you had going into it? Was it just the unknown, or were there specific things that you were worried about from like sitting in your seat? Oh my gosh, what's this going to do?
Well, it was more the unknown, and it
Right.
was more the compliance. Again, I didn't understand what it would mean. What
Mm-hmm.
does it mean? The plan design changes? Does it mean there's more work for the department? And we were a department of 3 at the
Yeah.
time.
And how big was the
So
company?
we had about 450 employees.
Okay. Yep.
I believe it was about 600 covered lives or
Okay.
so. But it's just walking into the unknown in general. It's scary. And fortunately, at the time, we did have an insurance advisor that was working closely with me to help me understand that. But what was interesting was they were not, unfortunately, the broker advisor to introduce us to reference based pricing.
Right.
So we, had to unfortunately transition away from them, which was difficult, but it was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and I feel like that's a tough decision in a lot of cases. And I heard you kind of talk a little bit about this, and even Elaine talked a little bit about this during Spencer's
Yeah.
podcast. But like
Yeah.
that broker relationship with HR, CFO, and president can be tight at sometimes. And you know, what do you see as the biggest barrier to breaking that? Is it just we go way back, or I guess when is it? I hate to say irresponsible, but when does that relationship tend to overstep, or be in place too long? Is it when it's they're not bringing the fiduciary or the right opportunities and things like that, kind of like what you're talking about? Like you were in a good spot, but maybe not the best spot.
Right. I do believe there is sometimes too much loyalty to certain insurance brokers or advisors where, whether it's HR or someone else in the C-suite that has had this long-term relationship with their broker advisor, and despite what they might hear, they feel like they're still getting the best level of service.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, and now that I'm on the other side of it, it's very irresponsible for all of them who might be part of the planned administration to not at least evaluate the options,
Yeah.
because we both know, there are fiduciary requirements and they're all put on the plan sponsor, which is somewhat unfair
Yeah.
because we're kind of at a disadvantage sometimes not having all the information and not all the knowledge to make the most informed decisions.
Right. Right. So you've had the experience in self-funding. You've obviously talked with tons of HR people and companies and stuff like that through your speaking engagements and
Mm-hmm.
conferences and stuff like that. What are some of the biggest misconceptions? I mean, even from a little bit of what you talked about, but what do you hear the biggest misconceptions around companies going self-funded? We or reasons that they don't want to or can't go self-funded.
I believe one of the biggest ones is where they perceive there's a huge risk if there's a big dollar claimant.
Yep.
Where what I think is really important for employers to understand is your self-funded plan with a BUCA looks exactly the same as a plan that you could curate on their behalf, but you're going to have even better benefits and better quality outcomes. And that's a
Right.
huge misconception that if they change from this famous logo on a card, that the quality of the healthcare plan is going to be compromised, which is actually the opposite.
Right.
And that is a huge misconception. And the other thing I think about, because I was this person for a long time, is, I wasn't trained in healthcare strategy. So what my broker advisor is telling me is really what I need to believe, because they are the trusted people with our healthcare plan, and now understanding it's the second or third largest line item a company has. It is HR's responsibility to be part of the conversations and really drive and engage their leadership team to consider these changes. They can't stand by anymore and take a back seat.
Mm-hmm. Do you hear, or did you fear that the workload of going self-funded was going to be, a huge burden for you as HR, that it was somehow going to now all be lumped on you, or that it was going to be this massive change that was going to be your responsibility?
Absolutely, 1000%. Because again, not understanding the concept of self-funding, I was imagining that we're processing claims and we're having these like HIPAA violations. You know what I mean? Like there's this perception that you're becoming the insurance company
Right.
per se, when in fact, the truth is every company is in the health insurance business. I mean, that is 100% fact. But I did perceive that it was going to be a lot more work when in fact it really wasn't. It was the same or less, especially like with an advisor like you. And I'm not just saying that,
Thank
but
you.
somebody like you that really looks at a healthcare plan in a more strategic way and not just a year over year, what I call definition of healthcare insanity.
Right.
You are looking for ways to help mitigate risk and reduce the claims and make the employees and covered family members healthier.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Right. And because you and I chatted about this yesterday, and I
Yeah.
think we've talked about it several times, like, in my opinion, there is a significant difference between health insurance and health care. Like, in my
Yes.
opinion, they are two completely separate things. Health
Yeah.
insurance is strictly, your relationship between an insurance carrier and like what you're paying, whereas healthcare is the actual, you know, things that you're doing, the vehicles to providing the care and the quality of care and stuff like that for the employees.
Yes.
Focusing on health insurance will not impact your quality of care. It will not improve your health care. However, focusing on health care and what you're doing and finding high quality providers and doing things like direct contract or DPC or anything along those lines
Mhm.
will have a real impact on your health insurance. Like
Correct.
and so that's just something that we try to help groups understand is, if you're focusing on this health insurance, it's
Yeah.
never really going to impact this. But if you're focused on, outcomes and providing access to, more information, and better information, then it will, as a byproduct, positively, theoretically, I mean, obviously things can happen and stuff like that, but theoretically, focusing on healthcare will have a positive net impact on your health insurance.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that once I started working in this, what I call non-traditional space, because we literally jumped from a BUCA self-funded plan directly into reference-based pricing with,
Mm-hmm.
our selected PBM, and we built and curated our own healthcare plan, which was a dream come true.
Right.
But, you know, having data to help understand what lever to pull that was going to help to have our covered family, our covered lives have better outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
That's tremendous because your productivity increases, your presenteeism is better, all
Mm-hmm.
the things that you look for as a company, not even, then the recruiting and retention, because you're offering something that is so much more valuable and people look for that.
Do you, so, we've heard this, and I'm curious because you're now kind of on the other side of it. We hear from groups a lot, especially in our state,
Mm-hmm.
that, we have to have a specific carrier for recruiting and retention purposes. And, you know, is that something that you subscribed to, previously, and now being on the other side of it and having, kind of this healthcare ecosystem in place,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like speaking to that is a better recruiting and retention tool than having a specific carrier? Like what did it look like before and what does it look like now? Kind of communicating that to either potential employees or kind of your employees.
Well, I think going back all those years, because I didn't know any different or any better, of course, and we have our healthcare plan and this is our provider and it's recognized. But because I've seen such a difference in the premiums and the outcomes and the ability to offer plan designs that were more um, they're richer than what we were able to offer before, we're able to brag about it. So
Yep.
companies should be very proud that they can create their own healthcare plans that speak to their employee population, not selecting something off of a page because it falls in their budget.
Right.
So that should be something that companies are very proud of. In fact, at Hendry, if I may for a minute elaborate on
Absolutely.
this,
Yes.
we did something very different back in 22, and it was because we have access to data and we're looking through our reports, and our mid-year review in 2021 showed that we had a very small population of our employees or covered lives going for their preventative wellness visits.
Yep.
Now, Hendry Marine, where I've been for the past 5.5 years, we're a shipyard at the Port of Tampa. About 80% of our employees are men, late
Yep.
40s, early 50s. And when me as an HR person, I see that data, I get very nervous because that means that employees are not doing the basic things to take care of themselves.
Right. Scary.
And based on demographics, of course, I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, we're going to have a lot of major catastrophic claims or even worse. And we couldn't stand by and not do something. So that's when we ended up bringing direct primary care on site to help mitigate those risks, which we did. We're very fortunate.
And what's it looked like since you brought that on?
So what's interesting, I want to give a shout out to the Walk-On Clinic. It's hybrid healthcare. They are phenomenal. They set such a high standard and met and exceeded my expectations. So we started 1 day a week in 2022. And this is a part of the story that I don't know if a lot of people know. I don't know if you know this part of the story, but when we initially brought them on site, I had frequently asked questions built out, the question answer type thing. And I wanted to make sure my employees understood why we were doing this. But the one thing I didn't take into account was the employee's apprehension of, why does the company want to know about our medical information?
That's a great point.
And acting very quickly, I'm thinking on my feet. I'm like, all right, we need to get people in there or else this is going to fail. So I'm like, all right, this is January of 22. And I said, all right, we're going to host a contest, and any employee that goes for their preventative wellness exam between now and the end of April is going to be put in a drawing for 5 days of PTO. We had one winner. So you better believe that the utilization starts picking up because people are trying to win PTO.
Okay. It works.
Now, in the meantime, we had one employee go in, and this gets me every time, goes in trying to win PTO, and the doctor says, did you know you had a lump in your neck? And the employee, and he had stage 4 cancer, had no idea.
Wow.
Yeah. And we saved his life.
I mean, forget dollars and cents that you're saving through that. I mean, when you legitimately, save lives.
Yeah, and I just saw him the other day. He's doing great and is extremely grateful. Another employee went in and his blood sugar was so high, he was almost at stroke level. They basically got him on our whole person program.
Yep.
And started helping him manage the diabetes. And what happened was they became the biggest advocates for the Walk-On Clinic and started encouraging other people to go. And then it just started building from there. But, we have our utilization, even for the preventative, is upwards of over 50%. We have close to 100 active patients. And, we wanted to be very intentional about it, because if you're providing a resource, they go on company time. It doesn't cost them anything.
Yep.
And, it's being smarter and providing access and not making it more difficult.
Yeah, you're eliminating the hurdles. And, we can think of 1,000 different things that, get in the way of primary care. I'm literally supposed to go and have my annual wellness visit next week. And it's like, I've got things that I have to do, and my primary care is, several miles away. And it's just like, you're coming up with reasons to not go do it. But when you have the ability to bring something on site, bring the care on site, it's like,
we were removing the excuses. We even started partnering with a local pharmacy that does 90-day fills. We analyze like what, what type of prescriptions were the most utilized the year prior. And we
Yep.
started partnership with a local pharmacy that will actually do 90-day fills. We'll deliver them to the covered members, and we don't charge the employee for them.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's the real change. I mean, when you're legitimately saving lives and stuff like that, I mean, that's what you continue to remember and that you work for. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's incredible. So when you're building this, this ecosystem and stuff like that, or when groups are, again, this is taken back several years, but what does the iterative process look like? Because I feel like it's you don't want to sit there and go from maybe a fully insured to self-funded and be like,
Yeah.
okay, now you have this, and this, and people get kind of overwhelmed with all of the changes. So what is your iterative process, from then and even now, just as far as steps that you're taking and things that you're looking at to do? What is that kind of, how does that step-by-step process go?
Well, I think it really is based on the company's tolerance for change.
Yeah.
In the two cases at my last company and with Hendry, even though I wasn't with Hendry at the time they made the switch, they went directly from a self-funded to reference-based pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the difference with Hendry Marine is when they first went from a Buca self-funded to, and if it's okay, I can mention it's Imagine 360.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they've been a wonderful partner of mine, and even with my last company and coincidentally here. But when Hendry made the change, they actually did the RBP piece first, and then we switched the pharmacy the following year.
Yep.
Which, what I've learned after the fact, and since I've been speaking at a lot of events the last 3 years, if a company is going to make a wholesale change, my advice is, at least at a minimum, from a fiduciary standpoint, evaluate the pharmacy piece, because it's the least disruptive.
Yep.
And you can yield, I would say, 25 to 30% savings, not just for your company, but your members are going to have a better experience and more options.
Yep.
So there is definitely a progression, but it's based on what kind of change the company is willing to make, but they have to be collaborative about it and intentional, and all believe in it, because typically if there's a kink in the chain, it can fail.
And how do y'all go about, not only deciding on things, but also communicating that? Like, do y'all have a benefits review team? Obviously your executives would be involved in that because they're ultimately making the decisions, but are you bringing people from other departments and stuff like that to be involved in, maybe it's even the discussions? Again, they're not necessarily going to have the buying power, but maybe they have the ability to speak on concerns or something like that, as, hey, I work in this department, I work with all these guys or women or whatever, and I know what they struggle with and stuff like that. So what does that process look like for y'all? What do you, best practices, maybe worst practices, whatever, just as far as evaluating cost containment strategies, or just the idea of going from fully insured to self-funded, or self-funded to, RBP, or whatever that looks like? Give me your thoughts on, I guess, the best path for the conversations to happen.
Well, I wanted to address the first thing you were talking about. So we actually are working, one of our employees at one of our operating entities, he actually is joining our healthcare conversations, because he really understands the value of what we're doing. Yep. And he's always complimenting us on our primary care clinic that's on site, and he's just a great voice.
Yeah.
On behalf of the employees. So that in itself is, has been great.
Yeah.
As far as evaluations and what we're doing, are you talking about Hendry or just in general?
Well, I mean, Hendry, or, even if again, I know you talk with a lot of different people from a lot of different things. So I'm just curious if Hendry does it one way, or if you've heard of other groups doing it one way, almost having, you can call it a champion or something like that. Yeah. Again, be a part of the conversations. I recognize that they're not necessarily going to be one of the decision makers per se, but, somebody that can speak on behalf of some of the employees as far as, okay, this sounds good, but what's what's in it for us almost.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of curious from that side.
Yeah, that's why we wanted to include somebody from production that
Yeah.
could be a voice on their behalf. But I also think from a company perspective, it has to be somebody that, does understand the value proposition and could be a good voice on behalf of the employees,
Mhm.
and not be afraid to speak up. But what we look for, with our solutions is, again, it's all about data.
Yep.
So it's like if you don't have data, you don't know what lever to pull and what part of your healthcare plan to drive. So, companies that are still with fully insured carriers, I think it's crazy because they're getting renewals without data.
Yep.
Same with the self-insured under the BUCA program. But in this case, we have programs that we've implemented because we want to have an impact on people's livelihoods
Yeah.
and health in certain parts of the healthcare plan.
Yeah.
One of them in particular is diabetes. 10% of our population is diabetic, so we have a focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to mention one thing, and I don't know if CJ, you and I ever talked about this, but one of the first things that we did when I took over the department here, we did a dependent care audit.
Okay.
And what was interesting was we ended up having to kick 33 people off the plan. And these were covered lives that the company had been paying for. I don't know for how long, however, that yielded, they estimated like over $100,000 in savings. So that in itself was like where it started. And then,
Right.
We just kept going with it.
And was that just dependents that should not have been on the plan based on like the rules
Yes.
of being a dependent, not necessarily a spousal carve out, where if they get, if they're offered coverage elsewhere, then they have to be on that, or is that what you're talking about? Just dependents that shouldn't be on the plan based on, maybe
A
it's
legal definition.
Yeah. Okay.
But then, there was also implementation of, a premium for people that smoke. There is a spousal waiver, to your point. Like if a covered dependent can be covered elsewhere but choose our benefits, there's a cost for that.
Sure. I mean, we talked with a group recently where they said 65% of their claims are coming from dependents. It's like, oh my word.
Yeah.
But this is fully insured. So again, it's all
Wow.
relative as far as like what they're looking at and what they're getting and stuff. But like, I mean, I was taken aback by that a lot. And so, we kind of talked through that. But that's a separate conversation. But
Yeah,
when
that's
you
significant.
when you start to have data and information, I mean, again, when you're fully insured, it feels like you're just guessing at things.
Yeah.
And we have no ability to measure any ROI for, plans or ideas that you're considering or wanting to implement. It's like, we can try this and hope that it works, but you've got no definitive way to see if anything's happened. I mean, I had a group ask me about wellness programs, and I'm like, you're fully insured, and I am very hesitant to make any recommendations because you could spend this X amount of dollars and I have no way to tell you if it's working or not.
Right.
And it's concerning, and but we have to have this carrier, we have to do this and stuff like that. And it's as you called it, kind of the healthcare, crazy cycle.
Well, I mean, I think we've all been, I don't want to use the word brainwashed, but I think there's a
fair word
that as long as we have one of the big carrier names on our card, we're okay. Where in fact, companies are paying significantly more, for their services. The outcomes are not better. So, but it's like, what are we doing? Where you can create a plan that really serves the needs of your population so much better with better outcomes, and you have data to measure and hold accountable, whether it's the insurance advisor or the carrier or what have you. And I've learned a couple of really interesting things over the past couple of years as I've been out speaking. And one of them really hit me hard. And it was, okay, the insurance advisors and brokers that are working on behalf of the BUCAs, the Blue, United, Cigna, Aetna, they are getting paid by the carrier. So if your premiums go up, they make more money.
Yep.
So is there an incentive to really, you know,
Do something different.
write your plan?
Right.
Whereas working with an advisor like yourself that has, you're paid based on however, but it's not based on the carrier. You're working on behalf of the company
Right.
in their best interest.
Do
That's
you do
great.
you see, or maybe you, what do you recommend HR CFOs, those that are evaluating options, when they're evaluating brokers or changes or something like that, are
Mhm.
you encouraging them and telling them to ask the question, how do you make your money, or, something along those lines? Like, transparency as far as all that kind of stuff is important,
Yeah.
and that's something that we believe in. But is that something that you're telling, your HR people and that you're talking with? Like, are you asking these questions? Like, do you know how your broker's making money, where they're making money, and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so it's actually becoming part of the conversation. It's becoming a normal part of the conversation because of the CAA and the
Yep.
compensation disclosure requirement. So, and as plan sponsors and fiduciaries, we're required to have that information, or
Yep.
else we're not being prudent fiduciaries of the plan.
Yeah.
So, those are things that really, those conversations have to keep happening, because even if you're fully funded, I think we talked about this, if you're not evaluating options and you're staying fully funded and there's other options to become self-funded and you're not considering them, that could potentially be a violation of the fiduciary standard, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I, I it's the way that I interpret it. Again, I know that some groups can't go, self-fund. Maybe it's size, or maybe it's just the fact that their plan is running so hot for
Yeah.
a variety of reasons. But in my opinion, this is
Mhm.
just my opinion,
Yeah.
if there is an alternative option, you should be exploring it. And again, if you can't make it based on what the
1000%.
data is telling you, that's fine. And that makes all the sense in the world. But if you're refusing
Mm-hmm.
to make changes for something that is better because of loyalty to an insurance carrier, I, in my opinion, and this is harsh and I might get my hand slapped from somebody, but I think it's negligence.
It is. And I even say now, looking back, I feel guilty for all the years that we stayed fully funded because I didn't know any better.
Well, there's a difference between being naive and being negligent. You know what I mean?
No, I know, but as an HR person, we want to take care of the employees naturally. It's our job to make sure we're maintaining a good balance between, you know, what's in the best interest of our employees, but also, how can we help the company perform and help contributions to the bottom line. And that's something I've become very vocal about, as you know,
Mhm.
is, HR is responsible for two of the largest costs of the company.
Yep.
The people from a payroll perspective, plus they're the largest asset a company has, and then the healthcare strategy, but yet, we're considered a cost center. And I just think that's not an appropriate way because in our case here, in 21 and then beyond, but in 21 especially, we had $1 million in surplus that we
That's
over
right.
accrued.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're helping contribute to the bottom line, and healthcare is just one example. But
Hmm.
it's something that I really want to help flip the script on. And that's why I've become more vocal about it. I think it's unfair.
And we appreciate your voice.
Yeah.
So you talked about kind of weighing the balance between, when you're considering changes for the employer and the employee. Talk with me about kind of the engagement and education piece as maybe you do make a decision on things. How is that education and engagement process being rolled out? Have y'all seen ways that you've done it really well, and then ways that maybe you fumbled it a little bit and it's like, okay, well, I know not to do that again.
Hmm.
How does all that happen for you?
Well, we've definitely had a couple fumbles, and one of them was earlier on when I got to Hendry. Um, we had made, some of the plan changes, and we're introducing new things. And then we also thought it was a good idea at the time to introduce an app. Um, and unfortunately, because we didn't pay attention to it, it was a flop.
Okay.
So that put that aside because I think now, a few years later, there's definitely advanced technology in
Sure.
using those. So we might revisit that. But um, we struggle just like every other company with respect to communication.
Yep.
It's definitely, meeting employees where they're at. In our case, our employees are primarily in production, and most of them don't have email or
Hmm.
company email.
Right.
So we do use a texting and an email for them if they
Right.
provide a home email. We try to do mailers. We honestly stopped doing open enrollment meetings a couple years ago.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, the thing is that you have a certain percent of your population that are going to use the healthcare plan.
Yep.
And what we were finding is we would spend so much time putting, the bringing the people in and putting the meetings together, pulling people out of production, only to find that even a week or two later, they'd still come back and ask questions that we just went over.
Yep.
So it wasn't being retained. And we thought, for the people that really have questions, we'll sit with them one on one
Right.
and we'll provide all the information.
Yep.
But we just found that it wasn't a great use of everyone's time. So we do push out communication, as needed or as much as we can. But like every other company, we can definitely do better.
Well, and I think, and I've heard, and I know you know him as well, Luke Asleson talk a lot about like you can't just have one
No.
conversation, at open enrollment and expect it to happen. It's got to be something that's being communicated throughout the year. Again, it doesn't have to be these long form emails, where you're expecting people to digest this, information, but short bursts of communication throughout the year talking about, maybe it's different cost containment strategies that you have in place. It's, emphasizing the walk-in clinic, even though everybody's familiar with it. It's, hey, everybody might know this, but here's what a deductible means. Here's what coinsurance means.
Yeah.
Here's what out of pocket is. Here's what a copay is. Like, here's the basic principles. I mean, I know, coming off my parents' plan 26, 27, 28 or whatever, I didn't know what that was. I know I was, now on this
Scary.
great plan, but like,
Yeah.
no idea what my deductible is. I barely even know what
What
that
is a
means.
deductible, right?
Right. And
No.
and so I think I feel like we're at a point where, and maybe you're ahead of the curve, like open enrollment meetings aren't necessarily as critically important if you are communicating with people throughout the year about the plan, about what you have, about what you offer, how to use it and stuff like that. And then it's just, hey, now it's time to re-up on this stuff if you want to make any changes,
Yeah.
if blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, I don't hate the idea of it. I really don't. But I think the only way that you can do it that way is if there is consistent communication happening throughout the year.
Yeah.
Is that fair, I guess?
It's very fair. And like I said, we can do better too. We're all busy. And then a month and a half, 2 months goes by and we're like, oh my God, we forgot to send out XYZ. So we struggle just like everyone else. We're always looking for different ways to improve our communication process. And the one thing I will say is, as much as possible, try to involve the spouses
Mhm.
in the conversations, whether it's open enrollment communication or emails or what have you, because, depending on the nature of the company, the spouse is typically making the decision.
Right,
And if they're not involved, they might, be put in a plan that they're not satisfied with.
right. The game of telephone happens as far
Mm-hmm.
as what actually is offered, but what's being communicated to the spouse. Well, I
Oh,
think it's, yeah. No,
yeah.
I get how that can
And
happen.
I was also thinking about doing some live webinars with our employees and their spouses, and you know, I think that's important too, to have proactive conversations and not be so reactive anymore. Just be
Hmm.
proactive.
Right.
Yeah.
And this quote, my mom told it to me recently. She was the chief technical and information officer for a big hospital system up in Memphis. And so she was a part
Wow.
of a lot of change and, EMR implementations and conversions and, yada, yada, yada. And so, they had to roll out communications to the team and the company and 20,000 employees and stuff like that. But what she had told me was their whole motto for everything was double the why and half the how.
Oh, I
double the
love
why, emphasize why you're doing things. So if
Yes.
you're a company that's going from fully insured to self-funded, if you're a group that's going from self-funded to a reference-based pricing or a cash-based plan or something like that, we're going to double the why of why we're doing it and half the how. We're going to emphasize, hey, we're making this change because we've evaluated the options. We believe that it is something that is best for you from a healthcare standpoint, from what we were able to do for you and your families,
Right.
financially, from a healthcare standpoint, et cetera. How are we going to do this? Well, we're going to transition to this model and we'll provide some additional information because I feel like people, the why is what always resonates with people. I think there's a little bit of a hesitation or an inherent distrust maybe that if a change is going to be happening, especially to something like healthcare, okay, well, what's in it for the company? Why is this happening? And
Well,
so,
that was my initial thought.
yeah,
Yeah, how are we going to be supported? Is it going to be different? Is it going to be more work? And actually, it wasn't.
right. Well, I think I even heard you talk about one time, like when y'all were initially rolling out some of this communication, and it may have been at Hendry or it may have been, previous that, you had a meeting with middle management when
Yes,
you're,
it was my
rolling
last
this out.
company.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you have a meeting with middle management. Hey, these are the changes that we're going to make. You're all excited about it. This is going to be so great. And middle management's like, it falls flat. Like, what's
Well,
in it for us? What's in it for
yeah,
my people?
yeah.
And stuff like that. And, you have to
We
pivot the,
shifted the whole presentation. We said,
yeah.
"Oh crap, we're actually not providing the right messaging in how much better it was going to be for the employees."
Hmm.
When you think of the out of pockets people are paying under BUCA plans versus what they can pay so much less, and in some cases nothing, right? And they have
Yeah.
better outcomes. It's really just incredible.
What is maybe your favorite, kind of pivot or, new benefit or just different way of doing a benefit that you've implemented that you've seen the most success with? I know that y'all have, recently implemented kind of a different mental health program. Y'all have transitioned PBMs. Maybe it's the walk-on clinic. Like, what has been your favorite
Hmm.
strategy that you've kind of implemented that you've seen the most success with, or that your employees have said, we love this, and what it's doing for, personally, family, whatever it might be?
Yeah, so definitely the walk-on clinic.
Hmm.
And I've said this, it's been my favorite project in my career. And it's because it's been so well received by the employees and their family members.
Hmm.
I
The
know
family can come as well
as
as far as
long
the way
as
that y'all set it up.
yeah, as long as they're 16 or older and
Okay.
they're
Yep.
covered on the healthcare plan.
Yep.
But otherwise, we cover every employee from day one.
Yep.
They can use the clinic at no cost. So but then working with them to curate a program that was suiting our company's needs. It's not like a cookie cutter.
Right.
So we've been able to really shape it and add new, additional services year after year, and then seeing the utilization go up and people taking care of themselves. And then we're actually one of the only companies in Tampa in this market that has the on-site clinic. And they're here 2 days a week, and that was increased from one. And, we're looking at ways to continue to offer services out of there. And the employees absolutely love it. And then we get people that come in for work. We get high school kids that do tours through here because they love the shipyard, but they're
Hmm.
fascinated that we have a primary care doctor on site. So it's really been tremendous.
I mean, again, like I think that speaks to the recruiting and retention aspect, right? Like
Yes.
it's, you've got this massive win, this, upper hand, if you will, as far as being one of the only groups in Tampa that offers something like this, that, somebody gets offered a couple bucks more to go somewhere else. And then, you start to take a look at, okay, well, what's the benefits package look like? And, they start going through it. It's like, oh, okay, well, I've got on-site primary care. I've got this, no thanks. Like building something like that, I feel like creates a level of, loyalty, if you will, because it's such a critical benefit that's offered in terms of like the healthcare piece and the health insurance side.
Yeah. And I completely agree. And like I said, I've learned so much, listening to people like you and meeting other people in the industry. And, um, understanding that, you know, even just primary care access is so critical to taking care of the employees and their family members. I mean, you even said you have to go and you're reluctant. So, I mean, it's, you know, here, it's right here,
It's
you know.
inconvenient, right? You got to drive like 5 miles down the road, and it's like, God, I don't want to do this, but I
I
need to.
listen, I don't want to, and they're my doctor. I love it. I just walk outside and they're right there.
Uh-huh,
Um,
uh-huh.
but no, I just love the concept of, you know, from an HR perspective, working, you know, with people like yourself that are able to strategize on healthcare strategy. It's not just a set it and forget it. It's an ever evolving program.
Sure, yeah,
And again, as a fiduciary, we're required to make sure we're doing the right thing. And that means
yeah,
evaluating a broker advisor in addition to the vendors.
yeah. What trends from your side of the table are you kind of keeping an eye on over the next couple of years? What are you, kind of focusing on, making sure you're keeping a pulse on, or your finger on the pulse on?
Definitely GLP-1s.
Yeah,
I mean,
figured.
that's
Yep.
really a hot topic. I mean, we cover them for people that are diabetic. We're not having a conversation yet about covering them for weight management.
Hmm.
That's definitely one. And we really want to, you know, up our communication game. That's something very important. Um, Also, mental health space.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
we really need to put more of an emphasis on that with the resources we provide.
yeah, yeah. I feel like the GLP-1s are definitely the trendy topic, and one that you know you have a lot of passionate voices on both sides, so it's definitely a challenging conversation to navigate. But
It is.
it's sticky a little bit, but it's we are to kind of keeping an eye on that, just having a conversation, seeing what people are wanting to do, and I think my opinion has changed multiple times over the last couple of years when evaluating it, just as I've learned things. I think I had
Yeah.
maybe some preconceived notions about it, and then started thinking about it in a different way, and then it's you just kind of go back and forth because you kind of see benefits one way, and then you turn
Yes.
around and like, yeah, but, and it's just like it's a very just tough.
It
It's not a black and white conversation, I guess, is the best way to phrase it. It's
no.
very convoluted.
No, and you know, the other thing I've been thinking about a lot, like over the past year, is, you know, with us, we have like 3 or 4 different generations of employees working with us.
Hmm.
And, you know, putting ourselves in a driver's seat where we can continue to create our own healthcare ecosystem that serves different populations or different generations rather than, you know, it's not a one size fits all anymore. It's not like, oh, here's your Cigna plan and everybody's happy. That's not
Right.
the case because you're kind of stuck in that box,
Hmm.
you know, whereas maybe we want to bolt on, you know, fertility benefits. I'm just talking, you know, out
Right.
loud, lactation benefits or whatever it is, because we
Sure.
want to speak to the younger, you know, generation of employees coming into the workforce. You know, it's different needs.
Do y'all frequently do, when you say that, it just popped into my mind. Do y'all frequently do surveys or anything like that from, employees as far as what they, maybe spouses or something like that, are wanting, needing? How does that kind of happen for y'all?
We actually contemplated doing one this year, but our company is on the market. So we were kind of like, well, we don't know what's going to happen. So we don't want to ask and then not be able to really implement changes. So we kind of,
Well, and I know it's tough because you also mentioned, you've got a fair amount of employees that may not necessarily have a work email address and stuff like that. But I wasn't sure if there
yeah.
was something that y'all were trying to do, even if it was just, straw poll stuff where you're kind of just having general
Oh,
conversations and
yeah.
collecting feedback and stuff. But do you
Yeah.
encourage, do you encourage, companies to do the surveys and, gather formal feedback as far as plans, benefits, what they're wanting, needing, asking for, et cetera?
Only, yes. But the caveat is
Yes, but.
the employee or the employer is going to do something with the data.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like, don't ask for my opinion, then do nothing with it. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean they have to act on all the feedback,
Right.
but there might be some common themes in the data that they really should respond to. And it's you're never going to please everybody,
Right.
So you get what you can and try to respond accordingly.
Yep. Where are you hoping to see things go maybe in the next 3 to 5 in your kind of perfect world? What are you know, what drum are you banging on? What are you hoping to kind of see more of, or maybe even less of, moving forward, just within the health insurance, healthcare space?
So what I'm really surprised about are how many employers are still fully insured despite having where they would be a good fit for a self-insured product. I'm
Hmm.
really surprised at the percent. And I'm still surprised at the percent of companies that are still insured with a BUCA, despite having options to have significant savings, and have better outcomes. So I'm really hoping that there's going to be a shift in companies evaluating their insurance advisor, number one, because that's where it starts.
Hmm.
Are they getting the best advice? So on the evaluation front for advisor broker, then of course, like the plan in total.
Hmm.
But then I also would love to see more legislation based on, the hospitals and the pricing. And, I know there's a focus on PBMs, but, they're only one player in the whole space,
Yeah.
right? I mean, yes, it's a lot of price issues, but let's look at the hospitals and the carriers and the brokers that are making commissions off of companies that don't know any better.
Yeah. Do you
So
think that the change as far as, getting away from the bukas or what have you, or just going self-funded in general, even as like that initial first step, do you think is there, trying to figure out how to phrase this. Does it start with the company or does it start with the broker? Or is it a little bit of both? I mean, I know kind of where I fall on this, but do you think it starts with companies getting fed up with these increases? Or do you think it's more of a broker coming in with a different idea that really, pushes them over the edge? I'm trying to kind of figure
I
out
know
where
what
that
you
happens.
mean. So here's what I've been saying because I speak at a lot of
Yeah.
conferences and I speak with a lot of advisors, and I tell them that if they are not presenting options outside of whether it's an existing client or a prospect, if they don't present options outside of what that company's currently doing, somebody else is going to.
Yeah.
So you might as well be the one.
Yeah.
And don't wait, but also you have to include HR in the conversations. But I've also emphasized the fact that there may be some of us in HR that don't understand some of the language surrounding what self-funded means, so the conversation with the CFO may be
Yeah.
different than a conversation with an HR person, but at some point you have to bridge that gap because there are common interests, they just have to find them. But
Hmm.
companies really need to be more open-minded.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, You're the best. I mean, this is like, well, no, I mean, I just appreciate your perspective from your side because, in a lot of cases, things I think from our side just come across as we're the broker, we're the sales guy, we have an agenda or something along those lines. So it's refreshing to hear from the HR side, the pros, the cons, and all that kind of stuff, and a different, you've got no vested interest in this or anything like that, but you just want what's best for companies, for
Yeah,
people from the human resources side and stuff like that. So
exactly.
it's refreshing to have, your voice on this podcast. I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for your friendship and everything that comes with it.
Absolutely.
So, um, where can people find you? Where can people ask questions? Give the people a little bit on that, just in the event that they, hey, I don't want to talk to CJ about this, but I want to talk to Stephanie.
I get a lot like, okay, well, you work in HR, so I don't want to talk to the salesperson.
Uh-huh.
But I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I think that's how you and I met, and that's how we
Hmm.
became friends.
Yes.
But to your point, I've been working in HR 30 years, like I said, and I want to continue to be the voice that speaks on behalf of HR.
Yep.
To encourage advisors and brokers to really help us understand what it is you're bringing to the table, or that conversation is going to be very difficult.
Yep.
because I lived that 10 years ago and I want to make sure that, we can help facilitate better outcomes for everybody moving forward. And that's really why I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, legitimately, literally saving lives, as it happened at Hendry, and
yeah, and along with millions of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the dollars and cents are secondary in those cases, as you know, but like,
Yeah,
again, putting in place opportunities for people to more easily access and more affordable health care is what it's all about at the end of the day.
it is. It's about taking care of each other and doing the right thing and not continuing to have increases in premiums with worse outcomes for the plan design. So, I mean, you're a perfect example of a company that's doing all the right things for their clients. So I commend you for doing that too.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Well, you are the best, Stephanie. Thank you so much for your time. I know you are very busy, but I'm grateful for it, and I'm grateful for you, and we will continue this again.
Yes. Thank you, CJ. Have a great weekend.
All right. Bye.
Bye.